Hey, what's up? This is Ben from WODprep, and I am here with Coach Gary, and today we are talking about hip mobility, and we're specifically focusing on flexibility. Mobility, flexibility, what's the difference? Well, you're gonna find out in this video, but really quick, if you're someone who wants to improve your hip mobility, you really know that's what's holding back your performance or maybe your general well-being, make sure you go to wodprep.com/hips, where you can sign up for a free masterclass that Gary and I will be running. It's basically a 90-minute training series. It's a long video that we are gonna give you the step-by-step instructions on how you can finally unlock your hip mobility. Again, just go to wodprep.com/hips to sign up for that class. So Gary, talk to me. First of all, what's the deal with flexibility? How is that different than mobility? Like, why are we specifically focusing on flexibility? And then I know we're gonna get into some drills on how to do it.
So mobility means the movement in a joint, movement that you can create. So for today's purposes, we are going to be aiming to create flexibility in these different ranges of motion that are going to directly apply to your squat. And so our first system, or our first approach to gaining mobility in that squat, is making sure that we have full range of motion in these different archetypes. And when I say that, I mean just going down into the bottom of a squat, right? When our knees are basically coming up towards our chest, that is called hip flexion. So we are going to actually isolate that, give you some flexibility drills, and break down that squat piece by piece with these simple body weight flexibility drills that you can do at home.
So sort of mobility is kind of like your movement as a whole.
Your capability to create movement.
So can you get into the full position? And then flexibility, we're kind of talking about the individual pieces of the whole movement.
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right, so what are we gonna do? Let's say we've identified, maybe you watch one of our previous videos where we talk about how to identify the fact that you're lacking hip mobility. Just a quick refresher, if you're someone who tends to have to lean really far forward whenever you do a squatting movement, maybe you're catching wall balls out here or doing a back squat that essentially looks like a good morning, you can't get that good vertical squatting position, you might be lacking hip mobility. What are some simple drills that we can do to fix it?
So our first one today is going to be our 90-90 stretch. We love this one because we're going to hit multiple ranges of motion. We're gonna get hip flexion with external rotation. We're gonna get some internal rotation on that hip. Don't worry about that. Just know that we're hitting a lot of things. So you'll see Ben get into position here. He creates a nice 90-degree angle with that front leg, and that back leg kicks out towards his left. So if his right leg is up in front, his left leg kicks out towards the left, and I want you to get that leg all the way out to the side. So don't leave it short. Get that leg all the way out to the side, look exactly like Ben does in this picture. And now we are going to make this a dynamic flexibility drill. So he's gonna go ahead and start by bringing his chest towards that front leg. And what that is essentially a modified pigeon pose. So if you're anyone who does yoga, you've probably heard of pigeon pose. Even if you don't, you've probably heard of that. But that is hip flexion with external rotation. This is essentially mimicking that bottom part of the squat, and we can isolate any flexibility restrictions you might be having in that range of motion. So think of like doing that bicep curl like we've mentioned before. We are essentially isolating that very bottom of the squat and getting flexibility in that position. So for this drill, what I want you to do is keep it dynamic. You're going to lean down to your chest, and then as Ben does in the video, lean back, look towards your back wall, place that backhand back, and you'll feel it in the other leg. And you're gonna go ahead and do 10 total. So you'll lean forward for 5 and lean back for 5 as well. Each time go into them, hold for 3 to 5 seconds, and then keep it moving.
When I was doing these, my hips were on fire. They felt really, really good. And my glute was actually cramping up a little bit when I leaned back. One thing that you did mention to me while I was doing this is when I fold forward into kind of the modified pigeon pose, don't just like get down for the sake of, leaning and getting to the floor. Try to keep your back straight and actually hinge as if you're kind of doing a squat. Remember, we hinge in CrossFit, we keep a nice strong torso, and that's what I tried to focus on once you mentioned it to me. And sure enough, I could feel that stretch, that basically that restriction that I had in my hip, and I'd hold it for that 3 to 5 seconds and then lean back and really twist backwards. And man, I could feel it so much in my hips. That was a great stretch, and that's something that you could easily do while watching TV or something like that.
All right, so the next thing we're going going to get into today is rewiring some movement patterns. So sometimes just getting into a squat, like we said, your body can just be guarding against this position. You sit all day long and it's like, hey, I like to be in this range of motion, and now you're trying to ask me to go deeper. I'm not okay with that. So we're gonna go ahead and do our ring squat stretch. So you're gonna see Ben grabs a set of rings. He's going to walk his feet back until he's close to end range. So he has nice tension on the rings. Then he's going to just sit down into a squat. And now we have shown you in this part what not to do. So if you're somebody who has tight hips, you will probably look like this, where your butt is still up in the air. You're basically 90 degrees at the knees. What we want you to do, like he will do right here, is essentially let those knees come forward, get that nice weight shift, and so now we're getting some nice ankle flexion, the flexion that is required to do that squat. But then you'll see once that weight shifts forward, he gets this nice little hip posterior tilt in the hips, and now he's getting into that deep squat. So what we are actually doing is kind of rewiring a motor pattern where we're getting that posterior tilt, we're training the brain on that weight shift to get that flexion at the ankles. So we're essentially tricking that body into saying, oh, okay, I can actually get down here, feel comfortable, I don't have to guard against that deep squat position. So
if you're someone who's super tight, like when I first started trying these, when you start lowering yourself in, you'll feel your body kind of tense up and try to prevent you from getting down there. Just having those rings out in front of you with your arms extended, or it's kind of like slightly overhead, it gives you a little bit more support that allows you to get down in that position, but you're more active than, let's say, like a wall squat. It's, a wall squat, you kind of just sit down and you can hang out there, but the wall is supporting you. This is like an enhanced version of a wall sit or a wall squat, right?
Yep, and if you're just somebody who, a typical stretch or going into a typical body weight squat, if you can't get that depth, this is one way for your body to get that depth while having that support like you mentioned. So, if body weight wise, you just can't get into that depth, this is one way that you can still load your own body weight and still get that depth so the body can start to acclimate to getting into a deeper position.
Okay, so should we do reps? Should we do time in the squat?
This is the tricky one. This is what we like to do for this one. We are going to do a breath count. So you're going to get into this position and you're actually going to do 15 breaths. And what I mean by that is we're going to do some very hard exhales. And when we do that, so you're in this position, you're closed, you're gonna go inhale, normal inhale, and then hard exhale. I want you to exhale everything out. And when you do that, you're gonna feel that core get really, really tight. You'll essentially kind of crunch down, and that's going to help us get a little bit more anterior engagement. So we're getting a little bit more engagement on the front, and now a little bit more posterior tilt on the hips, and those two combined is going to trick that body into getting a little bit more depth. So all you need to do, simple and sweet, breathe 15 times and exhale hard.
Cool. And I'm really sending that air out aggressively and you'll feel your
empty everything out.
Cool. Awesome. All right, so what's next? We've done the 90s, we've done the ring squat, is that what we're calling it?
Yeah, ring squat stretch.
What's next? Sorry for the interruption, but I have someone here to give you a special message. Alfred would like for you to hit the subscribe button down there. Isn't that right? Yes, it is. Alfred would like you to subscribe.
All right, so we've cleared up some flexibility restrictions. We've tricked the brain into getting a little bit deeper and actually loading our own body weight with some depth. But now we're going to piece it all together with a very dynamic movement that, if we can master the one leg, is going to carry over to a fantastic squat, no matter what it is, back squat, front squat, overhead squat, and that is called the Kazakh squat. So you may use it in your warm-up. If you don't, this is something you should be adding into your warm-up.
I do these every single morning when I wake up. If you've been following WODprep for any amount of time, I talk about Kazakh squats. I love them.
Yep. And for Ben, this is one movement that actually took his pistol to the next level. It's a way for you to essentially load the one leg, but not being in that pistol and not being so demanding. You can have a little bit more balanced weight, and this will help you develop a really good squat. So for this movement, let's break it down and give you some points of performance. You'll see Ben kind of gets into this split squat stance. Then he's just going to shift his weight over to one leg, and then kind of go into a single leg squat while that opposite leg is staying up, and you'll see his toes start to point to the ceiling. And now when we're in this, what I want you to do is only go to the depth that you can control. So if you are somebody who's tight and you kind of do that the lawn chair squat, that's okay. Let's just go to what we can control. I don't want you to bottom out, and I also don't want you to try to get more depth by letting your heel come up off the ground. Keep that heel on the ground, and then if you can get to that comfortable position, whatever is comfortable for you, now we are going to stay active and switch over to the other side. So you'll see when he comes out of that bottom of that Kazakh squat, he stays nice and low. So now we're essentially getting this loaded squat with nice wide hips. We're essentially opening up the hips as well at the same time as he goes into the other side. He goes in to his comfortable range that he can control and then executes a few reps on each side.
One thing I love about Kazakh squats is you'll feel your progression really quickly. So when I first started them, as I would lean in or squat into, let's say, my right leg, I'd literally feel the restriction in my hip, and I wouldn't go nearly as low as the video that I demonstrate here. So I'd be squatting into that single leg and I'd feel like I'm about to get stuck. And the more time I spent, like I said, I do about 20 of these every single morning, the more time I would spend getting into that position, eventually my hips just started to relax and release. And that's how right now I'm able to really squat into one leg, almost relax at the bottom, and I can almost get my butt all the way to the ground, which is not even close to what I used to be able to do. Or, you know, I'm so much lower and it's so much better. And that just shows you the power of dynamic movement.
And what's cool about this progression is if you try to do your Kazakh squat, and here's a little retest for you, try to do some Kazakh squats before you do the first two drills. Do those first drills that we gave you, the 90-90 and the ring squat stretch, then go back into your Kazakh squat and you will see how those just quick little isolations of that squat movement help you develop that Kazakh squat and allow that brain to say, hey, we can get a little bit deeper, we can be a little bit more mobile, and then you will develop that Kazakh squat a lot faster, which is going to develop your regular squats and your loaded squats even more.
Awesome. And just another quick thing that came to mind, I know when I was like teaching my dad Kazakh squats, he was like, whoa, you know, it's pretty mobility demanding, especially like, you know, like the inside of your legs sometimes is gonna feel really, really tight. All you need to do to like modify it if you want is just like put a band on a pull-up rig and just kind of hold on to the band in front of you. You can literally just kind of hold on to anything that gives you a little bit of support. Even one ring would work. But just allow yourself to go through the range of motion, and eventually, obviously, you want to do it unassisted and get as low as you can with comfort, and you will be amazed at how awesome it feels at the end of the day. So those are 3 drills that you can do to increase your hip flexibility, which then will enhance your overall hip and squat mobility. And if you like this, if you like these kind of tips and drills, then you're going to love the live seminar that we are giving. If you go to WODprep.com/hips, you can sign up. It's going to be about 90 minutes long, and it's going to be Gary and I basically geeking out about how you can step-by-step improve your hip mobility. So again, go to WODprep.com/hips and you can get access to either the live call or the recording of the live call. And last but not least, thumbs up if you like the video, thumbs down if you don't like Gary, and don't forget to hit subscribe, and we will see you in the next video. Peace.